So yeah, let's get started with OSINT. So I didn't want to make this a typical presentation where we talk about OSINT stuff. So here's my agenda. All of it is going to be, holy shit, I didn't know this stuff. These are things I perform on probably a daily basis. These are tools and tricks and techniques I use to dig for information, things that are beyond just Googling. So a lot of people think, oh, and that's just Googling. Some of it is. It starts off with basic searches, but this presentation is going to take it to the next level. Another thing I want to hone in is the fact of verification of different types of data. There's disinformation you can spread out there, corrupt data, and other people do as well. So it's very important to verify anything you see online as an investigator or as anyone who's just doing searches. And the goal here is, so I'm going to be all over the place just to show you a variety of different techniques, and so that I don't dox anyone unintentionally. So the goal here is taking lots of pieces of information and pivoting off of them so that you can build the bigger picture. Right, so who am I? For those of you who don't know me, I'm a certified ethical hacker. I've been for a very long time, before it was even called pen testing. I do a lot of social engineering, phishing, vishing, impersonations. I'm a CCIE. I've been doing networking for some time as well. I do code for fun. Today, I primarily work as a virtual CISO, more on the advisory role, but I also do a lot of privacy stuff, OSINT investigations, and I wrote a book about being a CISO as well. So go check that out. So OSINT, what is OSINT? It is not stalking. So this is where the stalkers log off, and this is for ethical purposes. Again, I can't emphasize more deeply on the fact that OSINT should be used for good. There are way too many people out there that use OSINT for stalking, for cyber crimes, for doxing. There's a lot of us out there who can use this skill for good, for protecting people, for finding information, for preventing all the bad out there. So I hope that you use these skills for good and don't misuse them. This is part of the reason I don't record a lot of my talks, because there's a lot of sensitive information in it. But let's see. So OSINT can be categorized into, I've done a lot of talks on corporate OSINT, a lot of network-based reconnaissance, some GeoInt, some social media intelligence. People will categorize it into different things, but then there's everything else. And that's what I'm going to talk about, everything else. OSINT is very fluid. Breaches are part of it. This is something I gave a talk on last year at Black Hills, Wild West Hacking Fest. It was called What's Up Breaches, and I talked about breaches, the different types I use for OSINT. You can use leaks, scrapes, stealer logs, data from different data aggregators and stuff, and you'll be seeing a little bit of that today as well. But this is one of my big resources. So a lot of people ask me, when I show them a lot of data, how do you get all this sensitive data? Do you go on the dark web? Is it on the clear web? I can tell you, I rarely ever go to the dark web. I go there just, hoping I would find something, but I've probably never found anything useful on the dark web. Even things like social security numbers and stuff. What you see here on the screenshot, these are all from leaks and breaches and stuff. These are passport copies in different leaks that were out there or breaches. There's checks with information. I've redacted some of this. And here was an Excel sheet I found on the clear web, just searching Google dorking, file type XLS or XLXS, and SSN in the name. And these are social security numbers of students, student records. So you can find a lot of this in the clear web online. You just need to know where to look for it. So there's a lot of breaches that I use when I'm collecting information. These are all the not so common breaches. So people think, oh, breaches are for passwords. No, they're for so many other things you can find. Just the presence of your name in a breach can be troublesome. So your name could be in a porn site, or the Ashley Madison breach, which was a website for cheating spouses a long time ago. So if you're in breaches like that, or guns.com or Bitcoin Talk or anything else, you know that you can get a lot more information from it. My favorite breach is the Park Mobile breach, because if I get plate numbers from an image or someplace, I can reverse look up that license plate number and find out if you were in the Park Mobile data breach. A lot of us were. I personally was as well, which I didn't know. You can find email addresses, phone numbers, and this is stuff that's been volunteered by you. So this is not government data. This is what you put in an app. So, verify it as well. But there's a lot of sources of OSINT. I categorize all of this under OSINT because it's still freely publicly available to anyone who knows where to find it. Okay, so the goal of everything we do in OSINT is due diligence. Just make sure you're hitting all the different pieces of data. And this is my goal here. I build a picture like this of my person of interest. I find out everything they do from a work perspective, what breaches they're part of, what vehicles I could find based on maybe Google Street View or other images, their social media profiles, and on and on and on. So all of this, is disparate. When I look at emails and education, I can find it in different areas. But I combine all of this and build a bigger picture like this, and then I start connecting the dots and verifying it. So you see all those yellow dashed lines. This is my methodology of verifying information, saying, oh, from the LinkedIn breach, I found this email address, and this email address was also found in some other online search, or this government record leaked his phone number, and the phone number caller ID was so on and so forth. So I connect those dots. And when I have this picture, I know that this information is solid, it's verified, because a lot of things correlate to each other. And imagine this is one person. Now you're trying to connect it to a stalker, or you're trying to unmask someone. And then they start, connecting the dots there. You take information that was seemingly unknown at first, a phone number you don't know about, an email address, but then you take that email address, you look at breach data, you find a password, you reverse search a password, find other email addresses. It gets pretty interesting. So enough talk. Let's look at some of the tools and techniques that I use. And this is just a very high-level introduction. So this is not meant to be a full-on OSINT course. That's later in the year. But let's see some of the tools that I use. So like I said, I'm not going to use conventional tools. My background is a hacker, so I'm going to use hacking tools. I'm going to use Kali Linux in the demo today. I'm going to ask the government to give me some data. Look at some historical records. I'm going to start fooling IVRs, extracting data from APIs, looking at paid data that you think you would not have access to, but you do. All of this, what you see on the screen, isn't this the definition of a hacker? I mean, a hacker uses techniques and data in front of them, and methods and websites and tools, and uses it to extract things that the tool wasn't intended to do. So we're not breaking systems, we're just asking in a different way to extract certain data. So in my opinion, that's what a true definition of a hacker is. So let's get into this. So Kali Linux, first and foremost. All of us hackers know what it is and how to use it. And I'm going to use Burp Suite and a few other tools to kind of demonstrate some of my techniques. So in order to do that, no, we won't use Google, but I need a target. So I randomly chose, last night I was up as well, like Ian was, till 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And I was looking at certain targets and I wanted not to dox a particular person, but I wanted some information for the demo purposes. So I just went on fastpeoplesearch.com, went on this website and searched for some random person in Kansas City, Missouri. Why? I'll tell you in a bit. So I found this person's information here, and if you look at their details, and this is how most OSINT starts with people search websites, you look at their data. Now, I'm not interested in most of this data. This is regular OSINT. What I usually do is I go down and I want their full date of birth. And websites like this will tell you part of the information. It'll say this person is 63 years old, born in August of this year. What about the day? I want the exact day that they were born, just to have a full date of birth. Where do I can search on and on, but a quick way to do this is, since this person is in Kansas, I search Kansas City voter registration records, and I see this website, check your voter status. I can go in here and I can start putting in that person's name. Let's say I put in a random, whatever. It asked me for a last name and a date of birth. I press search and we could not find your record. So for this person, it was Torres and their date of birth. I don't know the first part of it, so I can start guessing one by one. I can have 30 iterations of this. So an easy way to kind of go through this is open up Kali Linux, open up this page. Let me turn intercept off and load this page again. So this is the voter registration page. I put in that name and I put in that date of birth and I click. So before I click search, I'll put intercept on and I'll press the search button. This is not a tutorial on Burp Suite, but have a look at what happens when I press forward. So here's the actual field I'm after. The first name stays the same. The date of birth is the month, the day. So the second field, I don't know. I know the month, I know the year. I'm going to iterate through the second field. So I put this in Intruder and I write their last name, date of birth, and I put this as a wildcard, the second field here, which is the day. And I want Burp Suite to kind of iterate through all of these. And I just start the attack here. Let me start this attack. And as you can see, it's going through all the days. It's going to go through 30 iterations. And one of these, you see the payload length is different than the rest. This is probably that person's date of birth. And you can kind of see, where's the results of this? Let this finish. There we go. So if I look at the response, let's look at the response of some other field and render the response. So the response would show, we couldn't find your record, but for this one, the odd one out, the response would be, there you go. So here's their voter records. It shows you a street address, 7th Street. Not a lot of other information, but I have something that's verified by the government now. So 7th Street, let's go back to that person's profile here. You see a lot of addresses. Where's the addresses here? A lot of different addresses. 2 of them have the word 7th Street. Let me search for it. So 3 of them have 7th Street on it. They're slightly different addresses. So I can now start narrowing it down. A lot of the times I've had many addresses come out from different search results, and not just Fast People Search, but many others. And that's how I kind of verify based on voter records. So the government will tell you. I chose this voter registry, the Kansas City one, because they only ask for a last name and a date of birth. Some others will ask for maybe a zip code. No problem, I can put that in. Some will have a CAPTCHA underneath it. Florida now has a CAPTCHA. Previously, it didn't. They probably caught on to my technique here. But so every site, every state, every county will be different. But that's where OSINT leads you. So now I have some verified information. I have a full date of birth. Where can I use it? You can use it in many different places. I won't get into it, but that's how you kind of start digging deeper and verifying some of that information. So let's pick a different target now. Let's pick me, mishalkhan.com. So let's see who's registered this website. So part of the OSINT thing is I want to know, this is network-based OSINT, looking at DNS records and stuff. So if I look at someone's whois records, most of the times they're going to be redacted like this. This is a live whois record. You can go on terminal, type whois domain name, you'll get the same thing. But if I go to hooksy.com, I believe that's how you pronounce it, and you look at the records there, they give you historical records. So the current records are all, let me zoom in a little bit, are all redacted. But right below that, and this is all free version of this website, you'll see who owned this website in the past. So someone by the name of Mishal A. Khan at gmail.com owned this record. It's not me. I bought it after them. So now I have an email to go by, even though this record is redacted today. In the past, it wasn't. So now I'm starting to reveal more information. What can I do with this? I can start plugging this into other websites and start reverse searching. But let's go back to Kali Linux and let's close this stuff here. Let's close Burp Suite. Exit. Yes. All right. So in Kali Linux, what you can do is, so let's go back to, before I show you that, let's take this email address, Mishal A. Khan. So instead of searching it through many different places, my basic search always involves searching it through haveibeenpwned.com to see where this person's email address is. So Gravatar is one place. So I know if it's in Gravatar, there's probably an image there. So you go to gravatar.com/slide/check, put in that person's email address there. And now you get an image, a thumbnail icon of her. So now I know a little bit more about that person, what they look like. If I now look at breach records for this person, now I don't want to dox them completely. So let's change the email address a little bit. Let's just do mishal@gmail.com. Again, I don't own this, unfortunately. So let's see what breach directory comes up with. Sometimes this page takes a time to load. You just gotta refresh it. It kind of times out. Yeah, that's why. Cloudflare. So let's do that search again. And so I see some passwords here. Now, like I said, I'm not after passwords, but let's say I do find passwords of mishal@gmail.com. These are previous passwords of some breaches. And if I look at this password, for example, I can pretty much guess what these asterisks here are. So there's no need to mask them. But let's say I want to know what this password was, or the ones with the number. This could be a phone number or whatever. Let's say this one. This website does give me a hash of the password. So it's new P. So as hackers, very quickly when we look at hashes, the first thing that jumps to my head at least is hashcat. So if you look at hashcat, you put in the hash. It was a SHA-1 hash. Yeah. So it's SHA-1, which is M100. So I'm going to do an attack where I know the first few characters, new P, and then wildcards after that. And I click enter. I'm going to crack this. Some may take time, but since I know half the password and I'm just guessing the latter half, it already said cracked. So that password was new passwo. So it's probably truncated or probably not because it's a hash. So this was the password at some point. Now I can take this password and reverse search it in some other website and say which other email addresses had this same password. If it's unique enough, it may come up with other email addresses that I didn't initially find. So that's what I usually do. Those who are not, who don't come from a hacking background may, use this information and just search the hash itself. You can do that as well on Google and maybe find the answer there. But this would have been my technique. There's other things, other tools I use in Kali Linux. So let's look at an Instagram profile. So I just literally wrote in Bob as an Instagram. I wanted a short, simple name. So Instagram.com/Bob. I don't know who this person is, but this is what their profile starts with, Bob. Let's say this was my target. Again, don't want to dox anyone. That's why I keep switching targets. What do I see in the Instagram profile? Very quickly, I don't see a lot of, I don't see a phone number, an email address. I don't know if this is their name. Maybe this is their name. I see a link tree thing. What does that take me to? It takes me to more links on that same person. Oh, I have a phone number, starts with 404. But there's a tool I use which can extract some hidden information based on API calls from this profile that you don't see right now. That tool many of you may be familiar with, is called, hold on, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's called Tutatis, and it's on GitHub. So I downloaded this tool and I put in the username Bob, and you got to put in like a session token, which when you sign in, you get it. You can follow the tutorial. But when I try to extract some information out of this, it goes through and hits the Instagram API. And now it found that same Linktree link that I found, but it also gave me an email address, which is not there, and a phone number for the profile, which starts with 850. Let's look at that profile again. There's no phone number here. There's no email address here. Even the Linktree link had a 404 phone number, whereas the LinkedIn was created using an 850 number. So that's another way of extracting information using some APIs. And this is not public information. At least LinkedIn, sorry, I keep saying LinkedIn, Instagram doesn't show it as public info. And you can see this email has a different domain, TJS, DJS. If I go and look that up, it's probably the record label company of that person. So that's another way of extracting some hidden information and then pivoting off of that. There's another tool called Holihi by the same person who made this Instagram tool, Tutatis. And what that tool does is, let me run that tool against michal@gmail.com. So it's going to look at a lot of popular social media or online websites and see if an account exists or not. And it has a long list, a couple of hundreds of accounts there. So it comes out with only the ones that have accounts created. So I know that this email has an Amazon account, an eBay, an Eventbrite, a GitHub, and so on and so forth. I don't know what those URLs look like, but I do know that it's registered against them because this tool goes out and sees if there's a registration against that email or not. So this is a good way of knowing that, hey, this person has a Twitter account. Now my job is to find it. I don't know what their Twitter handle is, but I know it exists. So it's a good way to kind of pivot off of an email address to accounts that may not be publicly visible today, but I do know that one exists. This can also be used for law enforcement and say, this person is on, I don't know, LastPass.com or Nike.com. They can issue a subpoena to Nike and say, give me everything you have on this person. Maybe there's an IP address in here. Maybe there's a home address that's in one of these profiles and whatnot. So this is useful information to put in a report that these accounts exist for this email address. Again, this could not have been possible with just going on each account one by one and trying to create a username with this email address. That email address would likely get notified with a validation link. So that's some of the tools I use with Kali Linux. There's a lot more, but for the sake of time, we'll move on. Regarding breaches, so another thing I can do, so we looked at some historical Whois records, but a lot of the Whois records have been breached. So if you go to IntelligenceX or intelx.io and put in a domain, you'll see some breaches of MX records, Whois records. So let's look at maybe this last one. This is a 2018 breach. And so I already have an email address for this. So mishalkhan.com. I own the website now, but remember previously under the Whois records, the only additional piece of information I found was a Gmail address. But inside a breach, so I have this record line here. Let me blow this up a little bit. So it says registered Google Inc. So previously in 2018, somebody registered in Google. There's some email address. It's all redacted. So maybe it wasn't this record. It was the 2019. So there's only two Whois breaches for this. So let's see if I can find anything more than just that email address. Google Toronto again. So this is probably the registrar's thing. So let's see, I did this MX records DNS. Let's try this one more time. So in my demo, I did find a address of New York somewhere. Here we go, Brooklyn, New York. So it has a street address, Lawrence Street, Brooklyn, New York, for this person, and that same email address is there. So I found one more piece of information looking at breach data, a New York address. So now I'm just building on top of where I started. So again, breaches are your friends when it comes to OSINT, because this information was not available in historical data either. So moving onwards from technical tools, what else? So other things you can look for in government records besides this voter registry, you can look at a lot of other personal records. If you know where that person lives, look in their county. And this was very surprising to me. There was a document available online, and this is a random search a long time ago. I took a screenshot. This was some, I think, adoption records or child custody records of some person, again, public records. But this record had a full social security number of both the parents, unredacted. All this redaction is me presenting it to you on a PowerPoint thing. There were so many things I had to redact in this. This is all PII, full date of birth, where they live, their full name, their middle name, so many other, every single page had something, their birth records, and this was way too much. Their signatures was there, which can be used for forgery as well. So this information is out there. People ask me, how do you get social security numbers? Is it dark web or you pay for it? No, I just ask the government. They'll tell you. It's funny, but it's not. So yeah, so you can get a lot of unredacted records just by looking up public court records or county records. And these things are not Googleable. You have to literally go on each county website and search them up there. But historical data, I showed you hooksy.com for domain registration historical data. There's archive.org, which most of you are familiar with for past versions of a website. There's also Google Street View. So some people know this, but a lot of people are kind of surprised on the information you can find. So another random address I put in Orlando, Florida, of a house that has Google Street View. Let's look at Google Street View here. So I can have a look at this and see that this house has a vehicle, but I can see more dates as well. So you can look at past versions of this. So 2014, it looked like this. 20 April, it looked like that. Another car, more stuff here. So there's many versions of this you can look at and extract more information. Maybe a security system, there's a flag here, maybe they support some political candidate and they have a placard here. So there's a lot of information you can get from Google Street Views and previous versions. And then you have to correlate with home records and see if that person actually lived on that date or was it a previous tenant or not. But simply from this, you see a vehicle here. Now there's a tool that can identify this vehicle. Now for us looking at this, I mean, it's pretty obvious. It says F-150. It's a Ford F-150. But let's say you didn't know what this vehicle was. There's tools like this, carnet.ai, where you can actually plug in stuff. So let me stop sharing this thing here so that I can show you what this looks like. So if I take a screenshot of this vehicle right here, I took a screenshot and put it in this tool here, I can quickly identify. It says Ford F-150, probability 77%. That's great. Now I put that in the person's record. I saw another vehicle in their historical records, which was this. I don't know what this vehicle is. Looks like a Kia or something. Let's see what it is here. I put that in here again. Yeah, it's a Kia Soul, 83% probability. Yeah, it is a Kia Soul. So very quickly, I can kind of verify what vehicles there were here based on historical records. Now I have a starting point for something. I can take this one step further. So if I take that same address There's other things I can find about that address on sites, another people's search website like that'sthem.com. So I put in this address here, and I see, the regular information like phone numbers, previous addresses, more email addresses. But another thing you get here with some of these records is if you do show full profile, you get IP addresses, something that normally we don't get. Where they're getting this from, probably breached records somewhere. But if you look these IP addresses up and just go to a simple, IP address lookup tool, my preferred one is maxmind.com has a demo page where you can submit IP addresses, and this does IPv6 as well. That's why I like this, and you can put in up to 25 here. So it'll quickly tell you, where this IP address is. Again, this is not verified data, but it's, pretty close. You can get at least a rough location and an ISP address, put that in your report, and then, further your investigations based on the ISP and location information. So that's, more digging deeper into a profile, just things beyond basic email address, phone numbers, and stuff. Another thing you can do, so let me go back to my slide. I'll bring this up. So there's a lot of paid private data which large organizations gather. So anytime you sign up for something or the government collects your data, like DMV data. There was an article I read that the California DMV made $5 million a year or makes $5 million a year just by reselling your data, which you think they're not going to resell, but they are. So your home address, your anything you give to the DMV is sold for millions of dollars, literally, by the DMV. But so that data is not public data, but there is a way to kind of query that data. I found many methods, and I'll show you one. So insurance providers, they want to help you out. So let's go to an insurance provider like State Farm and say I want a quote for the same person here. So let's take their zip code, 32819. So let's do this 32819, and I want an auto quote. And I put in a street address, first name, I don't know, Tony Stark's brother. Let's put a random date of birth and vehicles. So now, is this, yeah, whatever, yes. So let's see what information State Farm gives us. Add up to 4 vehicles. Didn't give me any info. Fail, demo fail. Let's do this in a different window. So sometimes it has cached records and it doesn't go anywhere. So 32819. Let's do this again. Orlando. Let's do this. So what it does is it sometimes spits out the vehicles for you. Maybe for this address it's not. There you go. So I just opened a new window, a new container, and it actually showed me the vehicles. So, phew, demo gods. So Ford Fusion, Ford F-150, Volkswagen Jetta. So let's go back to this view here. And we do know there's a F-150 that the person owns. So this house has registered insurance for this vehicle. So we know this is not a visitor. So now I've kind of confirmed that this is the vehicle that the residence owns. The other car here was another Ford, and we can do the same thing with carnet.ai to kind of figure out what this was. But going back to the vehicles, that's a Ford Fusion. I know for a fact that's a Ford Fusion, and now I know the year of that as well. So we found two of you verified two of those vehicles. A Jetta was probably not parked there at the moment. So again, information that wasn't public at first, but through some sneaky OSINT techniques, through State Farm, I found that, yep, that those vehicles are vehicles that belong to the residents. So we can't extrapolate this much further and assume stuff. We can only see what information is available. At least we know those weren't guest vehicles there. So a lot of cool stuff that comes out of this. One last API call I'll show you is GitHub repos. So if you go to github.com and you go to any, let's say a repository, Signal. Signal is open source. So if you go to Signal Android, Signal Desktop, let's say, and you want to know who made these commits, you can see the rough, you can see an idea that Josh-Signal made this commit, and you can go underneath the commit and see the code changes. What you can't see here is his email address. You can, if you use the command line and go under the details of this, but what you can also do is call their API. So that API is api.github.com/repo/ the repo name, Signal app, and then /commits. And what you get is a raw JSON output of everything. If I do expand all, I see the commit name and then the email address of that commit as well. This wasn't there on github.com, but it is on api.github.com. So you can see a lot more information. I just need the email address. So I created a little script to kind of go through all of this and just extract the emails from it. This is an offline version of Michael Basil's tools that I kind of tweaked a little bit. And in this version of the tool, there's a little script I created. So you go to this tool and you write in, let's say, this one, Signal app, Signal iOS, and search all the email addresses, and it just pops up all the email addresses. You see some of them are legit, ending at signal.org, but some of them are kind of masked. It says github.com in them. So as a security or privacy policy, you should all go and put that setting in GitHub and say, mask my email address in public commits, because you don't want people to send you spam or start digging deeper into that email address any further. So again, APIs, this wasn't the intended purpose for it, but from an OSINTer's perspective, you can extract much more out of it. Michael Basil also has similar tools on his website, inteltechniques.com/tools, and you can kind of have a shortcut version of doing a lot of those things, and you can press like the populate all button and 20 tabs will open up and you can start closing tabs one by one. That's how I gain speed in OSINT, because there are thousands and thousands of resources. They keep changing over and over. But like I said initially, due diligence is what we are after, and you got to look at all different sources of information. One last or second last technique I want to show you is, so another means of exploiting something legitimate. So IVRs, we can hack or exploit IVRs for information as well. So interactive voice recording or whatever that means. So Xfinity. So a lot of people have Xfinity accounts at their home for internet or voice. So when I find out their phone numbers through OSINT, and I find out who owns the phone number or their landline number, and if it's Xfinity for landline, I usually do this exploit. So this is a two-step process. So step one is spoofing their phone number. So that's why having their phone number is valuable. So I spoof their phone number using Telnix or Twilio APIs, and just changing the outbound caller ID on it. Won't go into detail with that for the sake of time. But once I've spoofed their phone number, I call Xfinity's 1-800 number, and Xfinity thinks that I am that person calling because they want to help me out. They want to kind of skip the process of me telling them what their phone number is because they can see the caller ID. So here's an example, and it's a redacted example of the name of the person who I spoofed. But here's the information that Xfinity tells me from their automated system.
Hi, thank you for calling Xfinity. This call may be monitored or recorded. Enter or say the zip code where you have or want service.
I don't have a zip code, let's say.
Let's try something else. I'll need a phone number or account number to look you up. Which would you like to use?
So sometimes it gives it to me, sometimes it asks for it.
Please say or enter any phone number associated with your account.
So I give him the phone number. I actually don't even have to spoof a lot of the times. Once I give the phone number...
I have the numbers of your street address as 611. Is this the account you're calling about?
Yes.
So it gave me the street address of where it's registered, that phone number, that cell phone number. So if I don't know where the person lives, I just have their phone number, and I look through scraped data and I get 20 old addresses or the random home addresses. Xfinity will tell me which is the current registered address for internet service for that person. It's a huge data leak, in my opinion. And this has validated and solved a lot of cases for me. So again, hopefully Xfinity is not looking at this and doesn't block this method. But I can tell you for a fact, anytime you've called any IVR, whether it's a bank, whether it's some other institute, and they automatically or automagically know who you are based on your phone number, you can try this technique with them. I've gotten their entire billing information and how much money they owe with the Xfinity IVR as well. So there's a lot you can do. I'll leave it at that. APIs, we looked at GitHub API extraction. So I'll skip this, but lastly, I'll look at verifying information. So don't believe everything you see on the internet. A lot of people do spoil some information online. Well, I won't say a lot, but I do. So here's an example. Mermaids exist. Okay, let's leave it to that. Let me prove it to you. Weigel. So Weigel.net is a great website I use for looking at Wi-Fi SSIDs in a neighborhood. So this is that same address. I put in an address. This is that same Florida address. I can zoom in. So another version of that. This is where those vehicles were. Here's actually, you can see the Ford F-150 right here. So if I zoom in here, I see all these little dots. I just press query button here again, and it shows me a list of all the SSIDs that it's picked up here. And this is crowdsourced data, people war driving, going around with a Raspberry Pi or a phone and collecting SSIDs and uploading it here. So that's how the process works. Now, as a hacker, I know how it works. Can I inject wrong data in here, or can I misuse and abuse that data? So for OSINT, it's pretty good. I see an HP printer somewhere here. So one of these houses has an HP printer. Daddy Dude is one SSID. Okay, so sometimes you'll get an actual name, or if the house is isolated and there's no other house around it, this is their SSID, and it may reveal something about the person, like Daddy Dude, or Cubs, maybe a Cubs fan, I don't know. So you can look at all of this, but you can also, this data isn't very authentic. You can inject fake data in here. So if I search for an SSID called Wi-Fi for mermaids and query the results, let me delete the latitude, longitude, because it's limited by those. You'll actually get two SSIDs, and let's use a satellite view. So where is this SSID? It's right there. It's in the middle of the ocean. That's literally impossible. And the MAC address is C4C4000102. That's not a correct MAC address either. So this is literally impossible to scan an SSID here in the middle of the ocean by war driving, unless you're on a ship maybe. But I purposely injected this data here to show you an example of things can be spoofed. You can't take everything for granted that you see online. And this has historical data as well. Different times this was scanned and put in there. So if you know how to put the data in you can corrupt the data technically as well. So extreme example, but this kind of shows that all the other information that you see on people search websites like that's them and stuff, it can be taken out. You can inject false information in here, or some of this information is just not updated or true. I've done searches on people I know very well, and I know for a fact they've never lived in a certain address or a state, but websites like this show it to be true. Sometimes they mix up information as well. So don't take everything for granted. This is why we need to do our due diligence. And let's go back to the presentation. Yeah, so hopefully your minds are blown following these techniques. So there's a lot more that can be done using exploitation of seemingly useful services online, whether it's hacking tools or using data that the public does not see. And notice, nowhere here did I use Google to kind of show you a point that, yeah, you can start off with Google if you don't know where the data is, but if you know exactly what you're looking for, you're going to have a nice workflow of all the resources, all the tools that you need at your disposal to create that bigger picture that I showed earlier. And again, the purpose is pivot. You know, things like just the existence of an email address can show legitimacy, can show an age of an account. If an account has a MySpace email address, and a lot of them are part of the MySpace breach, you know this person is not maybe young. They've been around the internet for a while. It can show interests. I had a person whose email address was in an Audi.com data breach or a BMW data breach or whatnot. It shows they must own that vehicle for them to be in that data breach. So it shows interests. It shows password reuse, because you can reverse search passwords if they're unique enough. And sometimes you can find juicy information based on that. You can do historical scrapes and IP addresses, and eventually you can unmask a lot of information that may seem hidden at first. That was my quick and dirty intro to advanced OSINT skills and the possibilities that are out there. And I'm open for questions.
So, you am I there? Oh, I'm not hearing myself. There we go. Michelle, I actually texted John during your talk because right now we have 1,100 people watching live.
Wow.
So, you are killing it. And when you get a chance to go back and look through the Discord, we got a few questions, and I'm gonna go through them with you.
Okay.
But it's basically nothing but gifs of people's heads exploding and jaws dropping. So and I want to say this real quick, and everyone, if you want to jump back on, turn your cameras back on, we'll do a little post-show chat and Q&A. One, for everyone listening, I think I'm pretty good at OSINT. I would say a lot of people on this call are probably really good at OSINT. We watch Michelle and go, oh my God, like you are looking at a real pro that pros at and go, what? So yeah, I say all that so that before we go into questions, I want to say two things, and this is how we've been doing this recently, because we want to go into questions, we want to be cognizant of everyone's time, but we also want to remind you, if your mind was blown, one of the comments, Michelle, which was great, which was, this is the free stuff, like speaking of your training. And I responded, yeah, imagine what the actual training's like. So that being said, if your mind is blown, Michelle's going to be teaching this at Wild West Hackin' Fest. Join us, come out, have your mind, whatever's left of it, further blown. And you can find out more at wildwesthackinfest.com. And I'm sure someone is going to put
I already posted the link
in there. Excellent. I'm bringing up my mic, Ryan. Sorry, I couldn't hear myself previously. I didn't realize I'd turned down the headset. So that said, let's get into questions, but do stick around even after the questions, or actually we might as well do it now. Velda, if you can come back on camera before we go into questions. We are planning our next summit after the Blue Team Summit, and we would like your feedback on what we should do. Should it be blue team? Should it be purple team? Should it be all about platypuses? Should it what should we do? Should we name it Bodie McBoatface? So we're going to have a poll coming out here, either a little later in this conversation, or check it out during the next webcast and on social, because we'd like your feedback.
I think that we were thinking maybe AI or OSINT too.
Okay.
As the topics for that. So we'll get a poll up. Maybe we can post it in Discord.
Oh, there it goes.
There you go.
There it goes. So if you're
There
in
it is.
Zoom, there is a poll.
All right. Look at
Wow,
that.
look at the people
numbers.
voting.
That's like,
Holy Toledo. That's
ooh.
Man, I've never seen this. This looks like AI is actually
The current crowd might be a little biased.
Yeah,
Oh,
true.
yeah,
but
that's
I mean,
true.
AI
Don't
is
blame
sneaking up
yeah,
there.
it shows there's an audience here, right? So
Yes.
all the OSINT fans show up.
Okay, we'll do a couple more polls here as we get closer to the end of the year here, because a couple folks already said, Megan, no purple team. We're not talking about purple team. So
Yeah,
I think
we
Corey's-
before we came on, we were talking about AI and OSINT specifically. So just as something
Well, so
different.
the purple team, what you do is you listen to the red team conference and the blue team conference, one in each ear at the same time.
Yes.
Oh,
And then it's
yeah.
purple. Yep.
Yeah.
And then you get a cat.
Yep.
Gerald saying cough, GRC cough. Anyway, I think a GRC summit would be good, I think, honestly. But that being said, you don't want to hear more about this, but please do vote. Obviously, we do have some bias here as we approach the more than halfway point of the participants. 66% here obviously are all like, yes, more OSINT, please.
It's currently 70% OSINT, 30% AI. So
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. Very good. So let's get into the questions here. So we had a question from Matt at JPL Mars Rocks. Is this chat going to also look at, meaning this talk, CAI commercially available information vendors, folks like Intellis, Old School Public Info? I think the answer to that is definitively no, but can you give us some feedback? What do you think of those tools?
Yeah, so I have access to a lot of those paid tools as well, which the Clear, the TLO, and those type of records, and you pay a hefty fee for those. What they do give you back in return is pretty much the same information you saw on people search websites. So multiple addresses, associates, their family members, maybe an email address and stuff. In my personal experience, I've always found more information online, OSINT, freely available stuff than with these paid data brokers, because they're way behind everything else. The only information I would say sometimes they find better is utilities information. So because they do tap into actual utility companies like your gas and electric and water and stuff and buy information from them. So that information may not have ended up on the free online tools yet, but they will have access to it. But that's pretty much the only thing. They will almost never have better email addresses or breach data or social media links and stuff. So if you pick and choose, but this is why a lot of the old school investigators or PIs are lagging behind, because OSINT techniques like this are way beyond any paid search tools. And I say this, and I have access to at least 5 of the major paid data brokers, and I don't use them a lot.
It's like most commercial tools where they're more about making analysis easier than they are about the data itself. It's about a product. It's like saying who built the fastest car. Well, it's probably some dude in a shed. But
Right.
Would you drive it? Maybe not.
You're talking about the Tesla?
True.
Oh.
Right. It'll be the fastest for the rest of your life.
It's not going fast that kills you. It's immediately becoming
That's right. It's
slow.
the immediate stop.
Yeah, the attraction with those tools is one click and you get a whole report. And the report is like 40 pages long and it's full of junk. At the time it takes you to sift through 40 pages and delete, 39 of them, you're better off doing OSINT.
Very good. All right. So moving on through here, friend of the show, an amazing human, White Cyberduck. Question: does the Instagram API work against private profiles?
It does. It works for both private and business profiles. Business profiles tend to give you a lot more information. Like the profile I used of Bob, or B-O-B, now that I know, was a business profile, so it gave you more info. But I've used it on a lot of private profiles. It's hit or miss. So what you do get on private profiles is redacted information, like it'll be like a *** at gmail.com. So at least you know they have an email on this platform and not Proton and whatnot. So yeah, it does. Again, it's hit or miss. You don't control that information. It depends on your profile settings as well. So I still use it, and just take what I can get from it.
All right. So the next question here, I don't know what's going on with my mic, because I'm picking it up, Brian. I don't know if I'm just not talking into it right. Anyway, the next question here is from Can't Never Could, and again, I love that username. How do you go about vetting some of the OSINT resources, such as that website, that'sthem.com? And man, I run into those same problems. Like, you find something and you look and it's a very similar domain and they've grouped it all together, but then you look and it's like, that's not even the same company. So how do you go about vetting your sources?
So again, it's hard to vet these public websites because a lot of them will be around for like a year and then they won't exist. I have a long list of bookmarked websites, nicely categorized under phone number and email and social media and stuff like that. And I'm constantly deleting them, adding new ones, because they're not vetted. And I want to emphasize this. A lot of that information is just not true. You'll find, like, I search myself all the time on these websites, and that's like my ultimate test. And I see completely false information about me on it. And I'm like, good, let it be. I'm not going to redact it. This is like to throw people off or whatever. But I'm like, how did they get that information? And sometimes I have a good idea because there's people with, the same name as myself or the same address or something similar to me, and they kind of mix and mingle that information together, because you have to know how they collect it. They're using algorithms and large techniques to kind of mix that information together. There's no human sitting next to it and verifying it. So that algorithm gets confused a lot of the time and just mixes that info together. And that's why I say due diligence, you have to look at least 10, 15, 20 different people data websites, and then come up with your own conclusion and say, this is what I found based on this. Here's the outliers, which give me completely wrong information. And then you start verifying it based on either APIs or government records or other things that you may know on social media and whatnot. So verification is probably 50% of the process.
Yeah, you're talking about real, like, intelligence provenance, where it's, if I can verify this 5 different places and only one outlier, maybe we're 80% sure, kind of thing. So
right.
Yeah. We've got a ton of questions, but we are 1 minute away from ending. I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. If you have to drop off, please join us over in Discord. Michelle, will you be able to jump over in that Discord a little later and kind of check out the comments and respond? Awesome.
Yeah.
And then can you stick around for just 5 minutes? We've got maybe like 5 or 6 more questions I'd like to get.
I can
through.
stick around for at least half an hour more.
Awesome. So for those of you who have to drop off, it is 1 o'clock. Get back to work, securing everything and hacking all the Gibsons. For the rest of you who can stay on for more Q&A, thanks. We've got almost 900 of you that are sticking around for Q&A. So obviously people are very interested. So I'm going to jump to a question that, as I'm going through these, it actually answers a bunch of them. And I apologize, everyone. We are not going to be able to get to all the questions here. Yeah. I was tracking questions to ask at the end, came back to the Q&A, and you had dumped 59 new questions in here. So I'm just pulling out the ones that I think we'll be able to get to. That said, let's take a look here. Did you get this one? Okay, so Techie B says, I thought he was asking a question to me, but Techie B says, when finding the PII, can it be requested to be removed or taken care of in cases like public records? So I think
not all. So if you have, like for public records, like court records, if it has something to do with, children or child custody or whatever, you can request them to remove it for the safety of a minor and stuff like that. If it's yourself, you have to give the judge a reason on why you need your social security offline. I'm like, seriously. So it's very difficult. I'll be honest. I've tried it with some clients and stuff, and you literally need a court hearing for that and kind of present your case and say, hey, I'm a victim of doxing, and people are, calling me, sending me pizzas, whatever, at my doorstep, and impersonating me with my social security. Once you present your case, the judge will say, yeah, okay, fine, we'll redact it. So a lot of the times when I do search public records, I do find that information has been removed. So I know it's possible. I look at documents, court records, and it says this document, this docx file or PDF was removed by the judge. So it'll have a little comment on it. And these are mostly people with a lot of money, celebrities, CEOs and stuff like that who have time to hire a lawyer and do it. So it is hard. So my policy around it is never get that information in the system so that you don't have to remove it. I know it's easier said than done, but that's where my privacy side kicks in and say, anytime someone asks you for, let's say, ID, I never show them my driver's license, because driver's license is meant for driving, because that driver's license has your home address written on it, and they will take a picture of it. It'll go in public record or whatever. Show them something else like a passport card, or I use the global entry card, which is still a government issued ID. This way they don't note down my address on it. And then when they ask you for your address, give a random address that does not exist, or a PO box or UPS address. So those are ways not to get information in public record, but that's a discussion for a whole different day.
Yeah, you have a separate talk about that, which was one of my faves. Like the part about you teaching your kids to lie to people when they ask for private information is one of my favorite things. You're just like, okay, it's okay to lie in certain scenarios.
Right.
Right. All right. So let's keep moving through these. Let's see. What are we on to? Forgive me. I'm going to pronounce your name in a way that a friend who had a similar name introduced themselves. So Oni asked a question. Can we also use emails with the password hash on reverse search? Is there a tool for that?
Emails with a password hash so you mean to use the password hash as a reverse search?
I think that's what they're asking.
Yeah.
I've only got what they've got in front of me.
Yeah, so if that's what you mean, to use the password hash to search records, yes, absolutely, because most data breaches will have the hashes. Actually, they'll only have hashes, and someone like Corey or whoever will take that data and dehash it, or go through some hashing like Hashcat or Jack the Ripper and stuff, and try to reverse those hashes and put the actual password in there. This is why some of the data breaches don't have passwords. Like some passwords will be missing, some will be there, because they weren't able to dehash all of them. So the hash is always there, whether it's MD5 or SHA-1 or bcrypt. So bcrypt you can't, but if it's a simple hash like a SHA-1 or MD5, and that's a technique I use all the time. There's actually websites that'll store all these hashes. I think hashes.org was one of them, a famous one, where you just put in the password hash in there, and it'll show you, if it had already cracked. And you can search data breaches as well based on just the hash. Sometimes you'll find more records than just searching the actual password. So yeah, that's a good technique.
Okay. And for those still listening, I have captured as many questions as we can in a separate note. So if your question didn't get answered in Q&A or in Discord, please jump back into Discord after we end the webinar. Michelle's going to hang out for a little bit and try and answer your questions. So nothing against you. We've just got a pile of them. So an anonymous attendee asked, most of this is US based. How much works in different countries?
Yeah, so he's right. A lot of this is US based because US privacy laws suck. That's how I'll put it in plain and simple terms. I travel international all the time. I've done OSINT and intelligence work in many, many different countries. And they're right. Public data and information is not that freely available in those countries, especially utility information. People search websites don't show a lot of info either, because they take it from these paid sources as well. The only piece of data I would say is common across the board are breaches, because breaches don't care about geography. They just care about online presence. So that is probably your number one source of intelligence for international use, and social media. So those two work very well. Everything else that's probably vetted government information doesn't work. APIs still work, like GitHub or social media APIs and stuff. But yeah, it is a limitation, but it's also a good challenge to have.
Nice. Okay. I love this question because it's actually not technically related to OSINT, but boy, oh boy, internally we have a phrase that's report as you go, report as you go, report as you go, report as you go, as you're capturing things. So Spence Hutchinson, how do you organize your notes? Any particular tools you use?
Yeah, so I use probably 3 different techniques to kind of organize my notes. One is just the raw dump. As I'm going along, I need speed. Speed is key in all of this. You cannot slow down, and you can go into rabbit holes. So for speed, I just dump pieces of information in a notepad. So just text-based stuff, and I just start dumping it in because I'm going to start deleting it very soon. So I'm not very organized when I start off, but as soon as I start seeing patterns, then I have another window open with a doc file, which is my final production ready report, and then I start injecting information in the right places. So I'll have like a place for basic information, a place for breach information. As soon as I see the breach information, I'll put it in the breach section. Then I'll jump onto something else and put it there. So I'm jumping all over the place. This is just how my mind works when it's working fast. But I'm also not missing any information. As soon as I find something, I'll inject it in the right place in the doc file. And I'll keep a mind map. For me, that is the most important piece of information. That one screenshot where I showed with John Doe in the center and all those lines going across, I use Xmind for that. I found that to be a very nice tool. So Xmind, I'll just start putting in information there. So this way, every now and then when I go into rabbit holes or and I'm drifting away from my source of information, I'll look at the mind map and say, yeah, this is related because of this, this, and this. So let's go back to the core part of the investigation and not go too far out. So that's how I'll do it. I'll have multiple windows open and I'll have focused time to do all of this so that I'm not distracted, because as it is, that information is overwhelming.
Yeah, no. I want to add in one more note on that, which I think kind of summarizes exactly what you said. The note-taking system that works best is the one that works best for you. So if you're a OneNote person, cool. If you use, was it Google Vault? Great. Well, Corey's not a OneNote person, but whatever it is you use, whatever works best for you and you're comfortable in moving fast in, which is kind of the key thing that he mentioned there. So
just use something that has a format you can export to any other tool, which is like 80% of them, other than OneNote.
Yeah,
OneNote getting the data out is impossible, but like every other tool uses Markdown. So
right, yeah. A good call out, actually. Yeah.
Ian, there's a question. I'll take the last question about OPSEC. Let me just answer that since we're talking about so much information. Do I use strict OPSEC in case something leads back to you? Absolutely. I am always on a VPN, and I'm always switching my VPN around so that there's no correlation to that one IP address. I'm always on browser containers. So I have a container for investigations. I have a container for like 10 other things, different sock puppet profiles that I've created. So every social media account I have has not one, multiple sock puppet accounts, because again, I don't want one sock puppet to lead to 10 different targets that I'm searching. So I'll keep switching up sock puppet accounts. That's a different case that they keep getting banned, but I keep creating new ones. So that's a cat and mouse battle. But yes, so sock puppets, browser containers. I change my browser agents randomly as well. Sometimes that breaks stuff, so I switch it back. So yeah, it is a little bit of, there's a little bit of friction when I do stuff like that, but it works. Sometimes I'll use a VM. So I use the Kali Linux VM for a lot of the things. And yeah, so OPSEC for me is number one. There's a rare chance that I'll get in trouble, quote unquote, because all the work I do is legit. It's legal. I'm not hacking. I'm not doing black hat stuff. But still, I don't want to be caught in the wrong place with my hands in the cookie jar. When law comes in the way, they don't look at these things. They don't look at intention. They just look at the facts. Are like, oh, it came from your IP address and this website and blah, blah, blah. You're arrested. You're guilty until proven innocent. I don't want to be in that position. I've seen way too many people fall in that trap. So yeah, OPSEC for me is top notch, and a lot of people fail at that. So I would advise make sure you're using all these tools for OPSEC. Otherwise you could land in some trouble.
Yep.
And definitely don't trust whatever OSINT tool you found on the dark web might not be the best one to run on your workstation. Like
unless you got it from Corey, then
if you got it from me, then it's fine. But otherwise, don't trust what you see in Telegram group chats, etc.
Oh man, if you go to my Twitter, my last tweet, or X or Z or Xerman or whatever, you'll see me messing with one of those Telegram bots, DMing people. Anyway, I do want to add one other little pro tip on that, and I want to see if you agree with it, Michelle. When you're setting up SOC accounts, for all the folks that are in the Discord chat right now that said, hey, it sounds like I need to set up more SOC accounts. If you want to rapidly grow that SOC accounts LinkedIn network to see more profiles, reach out to and connect to every recruiter you can find. They will immediately accept. They will respond back and ask what you're asking for. And then those recruiters have thousands of connections. And now suddenly you're a first or second connection.
Another tip I would recommend on Sock Puppet accounts is to go to a really good school, a big school. Because a lot of the colleges, like almost on most of my sock puppets, they went to big fancy schools, and there's no way of vetting it, and they have students from those schools that work at almost every large company or large firm. So that's another easy way to get first level connections with most.
To build on what you said, Corey, my motto is for sock puppet accounts, you need to be the hay in the haystack. You don't want to be the needle in the haystack. You don't want to stand out. You need to be the hay in the haystack. You don't want to be found.
All right, and we had another question here that I'm just going to cover real quick here, because someone asked, what were the results of the poll? The results of the poll with 100% answered, or I'm sorry, forgive me, 785 of 860, so 96% of you, 67% said we want an OSINT conference. But Corey, I think you're right. I think it's a little biased. Moving on.
We're going to run it again.
It's happening. I mean, the poll says we have data.
Yeah, we have data. It's quantifiable. Justin Wilson, I love jumping into this because you were talking about things that you do as legal. Justin Wilson, what are some of the job roles that leverage OSINT? What are some things that they can go get a job as using it?
There are quite a few roles. So obviously the ones that stand out are investigators or threat intelligence people in cybersecurity. But there's also journalism. A lot of journalists use OSINT, and their lives depend on it. And in fact, I've seen a lot of courses advertised for journalists only. Marketing people need OSINT because they're constantly reaching out to people, collecting information, and they have access to all these databases like Zoom Info and stuff, and they have paid subscriptions to them. So they get a lot of information. They need to learn how to vet that information out as well. So there's quite a few of those out there. They don't know it's OSINT. They don't call it OSINT, all of them. But that's where you can use such information.
Awesome. If you're interested in that journalism pieces as well, I'd suggest you go join the Bellingcat Discord. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in there for anyone listening. Okay, next, we've only got like 4 more questions. Thank you for sticking on. I was trying to keep this to about 15 minutes, but people are really loving this. We've got 625 still hanging on. So anonymous attendee asks, have you heard about RoboCheck for, quote, lookups? And I haven't. Have you? Okay. Fair
Don't
enough.
think I have, no.
Great
Next
fish.
question.
10 out of 10.
Yeah. Pete, does Figgies, I hope I'm saying that right. How much weight does GeoIP really account for anymore, since most are now running VPN?
Well, I wouldn't say most people are running VPNs. Most people are probably not running VPNs. But the first half of the question, I agree. There's not much weight given to IP addresses because they change. Your home IP address changes a lot. And also, I've noticed that the correlation between the IP address and the actual location is a rough estimate. It's a database that's out there. Once the ISP changes your IP address to something else, they'll reuse that IP address for a different country, for a different city sometimes. But that database won't be updated. It'll say, oh, this IP address is in New York, but you look at 5 different lookups for IP addresses like iplocation.com or ipaddress.com or maxmind or whatever. And I do all of those, and that's where I do my due diligence. I look at 5-6 different versions of IP address lookups, and I usually get 90% of it is the same data, but one will be like something else, a different location, completely different one. So yeah, what does that really prove? Not much. It kind of validates some of your location-based estimates when you're trying to pinpoint a target. But for law enforcement, it can give a lot more. It can, it can give them the ability to issue a subpoena to get subscriber information for a certain date, certain time, and that's how they kind of dig information. But a better way would be so that IP address information that's online may not be true. In a breach, it's usually pretty solid. So that when the breach happened, you were using this IP address. So that's a pretty good source of truth. For pen testers, we know to send canary tokens to a person, and we can just send them that, open a doc file with a canary token in it, and that'll give their live IP address of where they are. But that's not OSINT anymore. So.
No, that becomes active at that point.
Yeah.
So John's got some great stories about working with law enforcement to do that, to uncover folks. So check out some of his talks for that. Let's take a look here. Last couple questions, last 3 questions. Anonymous attendee, any thoughts on Delete Me, the Delete Me service?
Yeah, I've used it. It's not that great. Delete Me has good resources, good articles on how to remove yourself from the internet. Some of them work, some of them are outdated, and it's a very small subset of stuff that you can use. It's basically just the surface area stuff, all the people search websites. A better tool is the one I created, operationprivacy.com. It has all the things an investigator would look at, so all the things I would delete someone off the internet from. So I'll go through that tool. It's a free tool. It's a dashboard, basically. You don't have to give any information in it. It's a collection of all the places where you can delete yourself. So it's delete me 10 times more. And it has OPSEC tips in it as well. So one other reason I wouldn't use these online services is because you have to provide them information first, and then they'll take that information and then delete it. But they're storing that information somewhere. What if they get hacked? I don't want to give my information to someone when I'm trying to actively remove it. So I don't trust most of these companies, and Delete Me type services are very large companies with a lot of funding. You think they're just going to take your data and do nothing with it? I don't.
And the other sad, not to be a Debbie Downer, but the sad thing is companies don't really delete things at the end of the day. Facebook might, or Meta might say they deleted you, but there's chances are that your data is still somewhere. We've seen multiple data breaches. We've seen data breaches where like the site is breached 5 years after, and people will find records that were deleted 3 years before the breach or something like that. There's many examples of this.
Or try this, delete your Google account, go inside and say permanently deleted. They're like 30 days later, there's no way you can retrieve it. We've permanently deleted your Google email address and stuff. Then after a month or 2, or even after a year, try to create the same Google account with the same username. You won't be able to. They'll be like, this user, you can't create it. A user exists. So they're keeping that information somewhere, at least the email address, God knows what else, because that's private information.
Yeah. All right. I think that also answers the next question from Osmo. Would you please post Michael's, and they put Michael, I think they mean Michelle, Michelle's website. I think that's probably the one that they meant, your Operation Privacy. Is there another website you'd like to steer them to that's yours?
I mean, if you want to OSINT me, my single source of truth is mishalkhan.com or mishal.us. Both domains lead to the same. And there I mention all the other websites and a brief, some videos about me as well. So don't need to OSINT me, just go to my website.
I'm pulling that up myself right now. All right. So if somebody could get that into the if somebody could get that into the chat, that would be great. Also, then this seems, Daniel says, this is very similar to opposition research. Oppo, have you ever conducted Oppo?
Yeah. So if they mean the term, competitive research or opposition research, then it is. That's another field that does OSINT, but really doesn't call it OSINT. But yeah, I'm asked to do that every now and then for companies who reach out to me and say, here's a competitor, we need, competitive analysis. And this is like the corporate OSINT then. This is not personal OSINT. We need to know everything about a company, their history, who they work with, who their partners are. And that's more intelligence about them so that they can make better informed decisions before they get into a contract with that company. So yeah, that's another side of OSINT.
All right. Last question. I saved this one for last because I think it's a great one to end on. So for those of you who stuck around, the 587 of you that stuck around for an extra 20 minutes, thank you. We're thrilled that you loved this, and we really hope that you check out more content from Michelle, especially the training class coming up at Wild West Hack and Fest. The last question from anonymous attendee. This may seem dumb. There's no dumb questions. That's why we're doing a webcast, but this may seem dumb. How did you get started in all this OSINT stuff? Did you read a book? What is your origin story?
Great question. I got started in this at the dawn of the internet. Now, so when the internet first came out, when I was in college, 20 plus years ago, in high school and then college, the internet was very new and they had a lot of information in it that wasn't restricted in any way. So that's when I started these techniques. Some of the techniques I still use today, I discovered over 20 years ago on how to extract information from social media or APIs and stuff. And it was quite open back then, especially the metadata analysis of images and stuff. Almost every website had metadata in it. Now almost no website does. So I started off with helping people out. So my intentions were never malicious. It was always, hey, I got hacked, or somebody did this, or someone's stalking me, and here's an email address, or somebody gave me a call with this number. Can you find him? And I'm like, yeah, I have some IT skills back then. It wasn't really cyber skills. So I'm like, yeah, let me dig into it. The more I dug into it, I saw how easy it is to get information around people and create this entire dossier around my target. And it was just addictive and fun from then on. And I was known as that person in my social circle or community who could get you the information you wanted, basically. So I'm like, I didn't consider it hacking or OSINT or cyber at that point. I was just using my IT skills for good.
It's just something you started doing. And isn't that always the path into security, though? I just kind of fell into it by doing this thing. So again, for the 573 of you that are still on, thank you for hanging out. We're seeing the comments here and you're loving it. And hopefully we'll get you back on, Michelle, to do another webcast soon. Obviously, you've got your training coming up, so there's no shortage of being able to get Michelle and really pick their brain. Michelle, you said you're going to hang out over in Discord for a little bit, correct?
I will, yeah.
Excellent. So if you're watching us in Zoom and you haven't, you had a question that didn't get answered, please jump over into Discord, discord.gg/anti-siphon. We're on the webcast live stream channel. And Michelle will hang out for a little bit longer so you can chat with them and ask questions. But I think we've taken enough of everyone's time who isn't a diehard here. For the 542 of you, thank you for hanging out. We do webcasts on Wednesdays and Thursdays every week. So make sure that you sign up to our email list to get notifications about that, or just check us out on socials where we publish that as well. I think that's about enough. So from myself, Ian Meyer, Ryan, Megan, Velda, Brian, Corey, and of course, Michelle, thank you for joining us today on another Anti-Siphon Anti-Cast. We hope to see you on another one and in one of our training classes. Ryan.
My pleasure.
Burn with fire.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.